Uh, I'm excited about the guest that we have for tonight. Her name is Julie Chance. Uh, at one point, she was involved in leadership in the healthcare industry and decided to become an entrepreneur.
I did.
A courageous move like that, and she has been, she's both the author and the president of Strategy by Design. Given where our club is kind of working our way through our strategy, when I saw the profile that she had out there, I was like, this is somebody that I want to hear the wisdom that she would have to share with our group, and I think that it would be relevant to a lot of clubs throughout the district. I'm just going to be that brief in terms of introducing you. If you'd like to say more about yourself, you can. But I'm interested in you getting into the meat of your presentation for the evening.
Okay, well, great.
Welcome to Rotary.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start by asking you a couple of questions. And this is participation, so feel free to raise your hand. Those of you at home listening or at the office listening, wherever you're listening from, raise your hand too. This is 100% participation. Have you ever set a goal or developed a plan you didn't implement? Okay, good. This was also the honesty question. Would you find it helpful to have some tools and some ways to really realize your goals, realize your vision with greater ease and flow? Anybody find that helpful? And this next question I want you to think about for just a minute. Don't answer it, just think about, and we'll come back to it. And that is, what would your response be if I were to tell you that your level of success in business and in life, for that matter, is not primarily dependent on how great a plan you have, how strong your strategy is, how smart, talented, or good-looking you are, who you know, what you know, or even how hard you work? I want to thank Royce and Corey for having me, and I want to thank everybody who's listening in live or via live feed or at a later point. I know that you've got lots of things you could be doing right at this second, and I appreciate you being here. My commitment to you is to give you everything I can in the time we have together. And it's my goal that you walk out of here and say, wow, I'm glad I came. That was worth my time. Here's what I'm going to ask of you. Regardless of what your response was to that last question I just asked, and I know some of you were, oh yeah, here we go again. Some of you might have been, oh, maybe she really knows. Maybe this person really knows the secret to success without working hard. A few of you might have said, I'm not sure I agree with that, and I'm not sure I disagree with that. Whatever your response was, what I'm going to ask you to do is to suspend judgment and to step into that place of listening with an open mind. Because my passion is helping people take the world and look at it from new, unusual, and hopefully insightful perspectives. And the only way you can look at things differently is if you're open to doing so. When I started my business in 2002, and I really can't believe it's been 11 years, 11 great years. I would change a thing or two, but I wouldn't change my decision to do it, to start my business. But when I started my business in 2002, my tagline, and I still use it today, was helping clients map a path to success. I pretty much thought that path to success was a great plan and a strong strategy. That's what I'd learned in my MBA program. That's pretty much what my experience had been in corporate America. Here's the problem. Too many of the clients, too many of the entrepreneurs and business owners that I was working with were taking the plans that I helped them develop and shoving them in a drawer, unimplemented, or worse yet, dropping them in the trash can, while they continued to struggle to get results. It was frustrating for me. I know it had to be frustrating for them. And I've got to tell you, those clients that weren't implementing, were not particularly good referral sources for me. Then one day I was having lunch with my friend Wendell. Now Wendell is a colleague from San Antonio, and I see Wendell, and at that point saw Wendell about once a year. And this particular day, I realized that I was telling Wendell for the third time about the new direction I was going to take my business. Listen to that language because it's important, and we're going to come back to it. Well, that particular day, it kind of hit me with the force of a well-thrown football right in the stomach. I was doing the exact same thing my clients were doing. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to see when somebody else is messing up than when you're doing the exact same thing? We've all been there, right? On that particular day, I realized, okay, something's got to change. I have to do something different. I've got to figure out what it is that I need to do to get myself into action, to get my clients into action, so that we can all achieve our goals, realize our vision, and get the results we're looking for. So after some searching, particularly some soul searching on my part, I found the missing piece. And I developed what I call the into action system for breakthrough results. And this system is really the core. I'm going to go through it. Those of you may not be able to see all of the words on it, but I'm going to walk you through it. It's really the core of all the work that I do now. And you're going to experience a piece of that this evening. Don't worry, we won't go through all 5 steps in great detail, but I will walk through what those steps are for you. In the time we have, you can experience it, and I'll give you some information on how you can get more if you're interested in doing that. What I'd like you to do now is just take a minute and jot down a goal, a vision, or something that, a goal, a vision, a project that you'd like to implement, that you're not getting the kind of results you'd like. You're not taking the action that you'd like to take. Because we're going to come back to that. One of the biggest reasons that plans and strategies fail, that we don't get the results we want, isn't that it's a bad plan or a poor strategy. Now there's exceptions, and in this group probably everybody remembers the new Coke, right? That was a bad strategy, flawlessly implemented. Most of us, though, it's not that our plan's bad. It's not that our strategy's weak. It's that we aren't implementing. We're not taking the action we need to take. And what do you think the reasons are that I hear for not taking action? What are the reasons people give me, the business owners and entrepreneurs that I work with that aren't getting the results they want? When I say, well, why didn't you do this? Or what about this? What's the reasons? Not enough time is a huge one. Thank you. Any other ideas? Resource constraints, not enough money, nobody to do it, right? I don't have anybody to delegate to. The other 2 things I hear a lot are, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to do it. And those are actually excuses. If we're telling ourselves we aren't getting the results we want because we don't have the time, we don't have the money or the resources, we don't have anybody to delegate to, we don't know what to do, or we don't know how to do it, we're telling ourselves a lie. Because the truth of the matter is, we aren't taking action for a lot of reasons. One of the biggest ones, though, when you really look down under, when you look down under the water and see some of those logs that are just below the surface of the water, the reason is we aren't truly committed to it. That's also one of the reasons your staff, if you have staff that aren't implementing and aren't taking the actions that they need to take, is because they aren't truly committed to it. And my goal is that by the end of this presentation, whatever you wrote down on your piece of paper as your goal or your vision that you want to accomplish, whatever you wrote down, that you either make a commitment to take an action tomorrow towards that, or you put it on the back burner. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about why it's so important to either take that action or put it on the back burner. So let's look at what it takes to commit, to truly commit to the journey to that vision. And what we've got here, the first step of this process is committing to the journey. What we have here is a little guy in an inner tube. And if anybody ever tubed the Comal River down by San Antonio, down by New Braunfels, so a couple of people, if you've tubed that, you may remember that there's a chute that you go through. And as you go through that chute, if you don't hit it just right, you end up in this whirlpool, going in circles and circles and circles. It's not strong enough to pull you under. It's only strong enough to frustrate you, because it really takes an extra effort to get out of that whirlpool. You've really got to make a commitment. And we're going to talk about today 2 steps to really committing to that journey so that you can navigate the log jam. You can get by all of those reasons. Because whether it's an excuse or whether there's a real issue, and I've had somebody tell me one time that they're all excuses, but regardless, you've got to be able to navigate the log jam if you're going to get to that vision that you're looking for. So 2-step process. The first is craft a compelling vision. And a vision is the picture of what life will be like once you've realized your goal. It's not the picture, it's not the image of you accomplishing that goal. It's the picture of what accomplishing that goal or realizing that vision will do for you. It's what a compelling vision is what keeps us going when we hit barriers. It's what keeps us going when things get difficult. And it's what allows us to move forward without relying solely on self-discipline and willpower. Because it gets really tiresome if you're trying to use self-discipline and willpower to get where you want to go. And many of us know how tiring that can get because we've tried to use self-discipline and willpower with diets. Some people don't relate. Lucky you. I'm sure you've done it in some other area of your life. So when you lack a compelling vision, it's like being on a mountain road, a winding mountain road in really thick, dense fog. You've got your foot on the brake most of the time. You're hesitant to take action, and it's just not a lot of fun. Now, the sun comes out, the fog burns off, you put your foot on the gas, you navigate the curves with confidence, and you enjoy the journey. That's what a compelling vision will do for you. And a compelling vision is important if you're tired of talking about what you're going to do and not taking action to make it a reality. If you know that not acting is costing you money and a whole lot more every single day, because when we don't take action, especially when we tell ourselves that we will take action, we begin to erode our confidence in ourselves. And a lot of times, what's gotten us to where we are, the vision that's gotten us to where we are, and the actions that have gotten us to where we are, aren't going to get us to where we want to go. Let's say, for example, that you had a goal of visiting all 50 states. Anybody been to all 50 states? I'm getting close. I think I have 5 to go. And I'm looking for work assignments because they aren't necessarily, most of them, places I want to go on vacation. But you can get to 49 of those states in a car. It might not be the most efficient way to get there. It may not be the most effective way to get to some of the states. And it certainly might not be the most fun way. A drive to Alaska isn't particularly thrilling to me, but you can do it in a car. I don't care how many times you drive that car to the ocean. I don't care how many times you try. You aren't going to drive your car to Hawaii. Now, you might put it on a boat. You might put it on an airplane. But what got you to those 50 states isn't going to get you to where you want to go. And that's where that doing something different and that compelling vision comes into effect. So there's eight components of a compelling vision. And you've got to have all 8 of them in place for it to really motivate you to take action without using force, without relying on willpower and self-discipline. We're going to talk primarily about one of those today, and then I'll mention a couple of others, and I'll let you know how you can get a worksheet that's got them all if you're interested in doing that. So the one we're going to start with is your language has to support your vision. What did I tell Wendell for the 3rd time? I'm going to. I'm going to. Do an experiment with me. I'm going to give you an example, and then I want you to take whatever that goal was, whatever that vision was that you wrote down on your piece of paper, and I want you to repeat it to yourself afterwards. Here's the example I used, and I want you to pay attention to how it feels different between the two. So I am learning Spanish. I am going to learn Spanish in 2013. So say I am going to whatever your goal is. Now say I am learning Spanish. Substitute your goal. I am learning Spanish in 2013. And how was that different, or was it different? Anybody have a sense of how that was different?
Take out the doubt.
Takes out the doubt, makes it more real. So if the doubt takes out, it makes it more real. And that's a really good point, because one of the things we tend to do is we tend to we have our vision out here and we've got what we want, and then we project all of our doubts, and we project our fears, and we project what we're afraid might happen, the what ifs into it. And when we do that, think about, okay, you're trying to take steps towards your vision, but you've got your doubts and your fears out there with it. So that's a really good point, that takes out the doubts. What else? How else was it different for people? Anybody else have a sense? Did you have a sense of it being different?
The way it makes your body feel is different if you're using different words. It's almost like your physiology is responding different based on what you say.
The way it makes your body feel is different. And different people react differently with that. I feel it very strongly that when I say I'm going to, it's out here. When I say I am, it's in here. Some people see a picture, so the picture's different. The picture might be when they say I am, it's closer, it's bigger, it's brighter, it's more vivid. other people feel it. But generally there is a physical component, either a feeling, a vision, or maybe the words or the voice that you hear in your head is a little bit different. And the voice that you hear in your head is the one that you just said, what voice? To yourself? You know, you heard that in your head. That's what we're talking about. So get rid of going to. I am. Easy, easy first step. Second thing is the way your language has to support your vision, and one of the ways we sabotage it is with should. I should make those follow-up calls. I should go to the gym. Here's a quick language fix for that. I want to because. I want to make those follow-up calls because I might get some business out of it. I want to make those follow-up calls because I might make a connection with a really neat person. I want to make those follow-up calls because it's a challenge. I can figure out what this person really needs and if there's a fit between what I do. I want to make those follow-up calls because if I don't, I might not be able to pay the rent. So it's both sides. It's both the positive and good that comes out of it if you do it, and to give yourself that extra little nudge, sometimes you gotta remind yourself of what bad might happen if you don't do it. So I should becomes I want to because. And the third one that we're going to talk about is I want but. And this goes to what you mentioned earlier about putting the doubt into your vision. I want to take my business to $1 million, but I don't want to give up the quality time that I'm spending with my family. Here's a quick fix for that. I want and. I want to take my business to $1 million and I want to continue spending time with my family. Now, don't worry about the fact that you don't know how yet. We're in the visioning phase. We're at step 1. We've got a lot of steps to go through before we get to step 4, which is chart the course. This is where you really start worrying about how. In the visioning phase, open up the possibilities. So when you say, I want and, how is that different? Anybody have a different sense of how that's different than I want but?
But's negative.
But's negative. And generally what we do with but is it puts us in conflict with ourselves. And if we start out in conflict with ourselves, then we're already behind the 8 ball before we ever get started. So in the visioning process, open up possibilities. And language is one of the ways that we can open up possibilities. When I work with clients, this is an area I start with because 1, it's very powerful. And 2, it takes a little bit of awareness. There's really no downside. If I decide that I'm going to get healthier and going to discard some extra pounds, there's at least a perceived downside to me. I may have to give up eating some of the things I really love. I might have to get up and get out and do exercise a little bit more than I want to. So along with the upside, there's the downside. With language, there really isn't a downside. You just become aware of it and change it, and it becomes very, very powerful. So obviously when I work with people, I go a whole lot deeper on this subject, but I know people have places to get and things to do, so we won't go any deeper into this tonight. If you want to go dive into it on your own, I've got a worksheet that goes through all 8 of the compelling vision, and I'll tell you how you can get that. Well, actually, if you'll just give me a card, or if you're listening later or you're listening online, you can email me at jchance, JCHANCE, at strategies-by-design, DESIGN.com. Tell me you want the vision worksheet, and I will send that to you. I also have an ebook on language that goes into more of the language tips and tricks that'll really allow you to leverage your language and start building that compelling vision. So if you're interested in that, just let me know and I will send those to you. And here's a question that I'd like you to ask yourself and jot down again is, what are you saying to yourself or what are you saying to others that might be getting in the way of you fully achieving your goals and realizing your vision? So is there something that you tend to say that puts you into a position that is not moving you forward the way you want to? Because language will actually keep us stuck. It'll keep us from moving forward. So that's the first step in committing to the journey, is crafting a compelling vision. The second step is to take a big gulp action. I've got a fly visiting me. A big gulp action. And here's what a big gulp action is. It's something that when you think about it, it takes your breath away. The thought of doing it makes you gasp. And the instant you do it, you say, holy cow, what did I just do? And you probably don't say cow. That's a big gulp action. That's what really, that combined with the compelling vision is what allows you to get out of that whirlpool of going around and around in circles and pop you up on the bank so that you can assess the situation. And before we get into the assessing the situation, what I'd like you to do is jot down 2 or 3 big gulp actions that you can take to move you forward towards that goal or that vision. And here's the deal about these actions. What might be a big gulp for me, you might look at me and say, that's nothing. I can do that piece of cake. It's not about whether or not it's a big gulp for somebody else. It's whether or not it's a big gulp for you. So you're the only one that can really judge whether or not it's a big gulp action. And you can't judge anybody else's. As you write down these 3, what I'd like you to do is really think about one of them being something that is go off the cliff. You know, something that would take you at least right to the edge of the cliff. I'm not going to ask you to do that one, but I want you to expand your thinking to the point of all the possibilities of actions you could take. Because what that does is it helps us realize that we do have a choice. We may choose not to take an action. So if you've got something that you need money for, you know, a big gulp action could be cash in your 401k or mortgage your house. I'm not suggesting you do that.
Doesn't mean we don't filter the ideas.
If you don't think about, we say we can't, when really we choose not to. Now, it might be a stupid thing to do, so it would be a wise choice to choose not to, but realize it's a choice. It's not that we can't, it's that we choose not to because we don't like the consequences. You know, quitting our jobs is a choice. We could do that. We might not like the consequences of not being able to pay the mortgage. Rather than mortgaging it to the hilt, you know, we lose the house. We don't like the consequences. But realize that it is a choice, because that again is what opens up those possibilities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the power of a compelling vision. One of the ladies I worked with has a vision. She had it for quite some time and did a lot of talking about it. And it was to take her consulting practice to $1 million. Now, she had a very healthy consulting practice. It gave her most, if not all, of what she needed in terms of money. And that's one of the things when our goals are money related. It's been shown time and time and time again. Beyond a certain point, and that point is not very high, money in and of itself is not a motivator. There's something else about that. So what the first thing we had to do was this goal of taking her practice from a few $100,000 to $1 million was we had to make it a compelling vision. We had to go through it, those 8 components. The things like her why. What would it do for her? What would it do for others? What would it do for her community? What would it do for her family, her friends? What would the impact be? To go through all of those compelling visions. And then she had to take her big gulp action. And she had never hired anybody before. She'd hired consultants to work with her, but she'd never paid anybody not that she wasn't billing out, right? So she had people that worked with her as consultants, but she only hired people if she had billable hours to bill out. And she decided to hire an operations manager, which was a big action for her. It was a lot for her to make this decision to hire somebody. And the interesting thing is that particular person didn't work out. But by her taking that action, it opened up the way she looked at the situation, the way she perceived what needed to be done, and the way she perceived her role in it. And she was actually able to leverage that to where she is now well on that path and doing some things differently that'll get her where she wants to go. So that's the power of a vision. It puts you out on the bank where you can take a look at the situation from a different perspective. Because once we get out of the water, once we get out from in the middle of the day-to-day operations and we look at it differently, we've got a different view, a different perspective, and we can see solutions. We can see them from a different level. And here's what this always reminds me of. Several years ago, my brother and sister-in-law and I went whitewater rafting. Now, my nephew was quite young at the time. He was probably 8, 9, and he chose not to go with us that day. I've never forgiven him for that, because had he gone, we would have had to go on a different rafting trip. Since he didn't go, we could go on the Class 4 and 5 rapids. None of us had any business being out there, and I'm surprised that my brother and sister-in-law are still married. They are. What we would do when we would come up on those rapids is we'd have to take the raft over to the edge, climb up on the bank, and look at the rapids from a different perspective so we could go see how to go through them, where to run the rapids. The guide gave us ideas and directions because he understood it and could see it differently than we would. And he also took into account what our strengths were in terms of the team he had in the raft so that we could look at that and hopefully make it through. And I'm happy to report we made it through without falling out. That's the good news. The bad news is we did everything we weren't supposed to do. Sometimes it just works out. So that's step 2. I'm going to run through the other steps for you, the 5-step system, just tell you what they are, and then I'll wrap up because I know people have other things to do. So step 1, commit to the journey. Step 2, assess the situation. It's where you get out. You take some time to look at what are your strengths. You look at your situation. You look at your environment. You look internally at the company, at yourself, at the staff. Navigate the logjam. Generally, before you can get down the river, there's anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe 5 critical issues that you have to solve. What are those things that if you don't do that, nothing else is going to matter? That's the logjam items that you navigate. 4 is chart the course. That's where you start looking at those key initiatives. What are the things we need to do to move from where we are right now to where we want to go? And then 5 is maintain the momentum. So that's the 5 steps that I go through when I work with businesses, and what I recommend you go through to really realize those goals and visions that you have for your business. So now it's time for you to commit. And those 3 things that you wrote down, and I'm even going to let you off the hook this evening. Those 3 things that you wrote down, usually I get people to share, but I will give you a break. Of those 3 things that you wrote down, what's one that you'll do this tomorrow? What's tomorrow's Wednesday? In the next 24 hours, yes. What will you do in the next 24 hours that will really move you forward? And one of the things I'd like to offer you, if you're interested, and if you're listening to this later, you can email me if you are interested in this, is a telephone conversation to really look at, it's complimentary, look at what might be getting in your way and what actions do you need to take. So if you're interested in that, give me a business card or fill out a form, email me, and I will schedule a time. Here's what I'm going to ask, though, is that if you request a session, that you follow through with scheduling it. Because here's why, and whether you're interested or not, I alluded to this earlier, but whether you're interested or not, you're going to want to listen to this. When you tell yourself you're going to do something, when you say you're going to take an action towards your goal or your vision, and you don't take it, it erodes your confidence in yourself. And we are really good about keeping our word to other people. Most of us are much less good at keeping our word to ourselves. And that's really, really critical. So in closing, we don't fail to achieve our goals and realize our vision because we have a weak strategy or a faulty plan. We fail because we don't take action. And we don't take action because we're not truly committed. Thank you.